Okay. Oops. I think we are ready. Got a few people here. Okay. I think we should get started. So welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and do a roll call. Ariana, you want to just sort of name off folks and let them respond as to whether or not they're here?
Yes, actually, Andrew's going to move us through roll call, and I will keep track of quorum.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so let's take a look here. Melissa Archer.
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning. Liz Fitzsimmons.
I believe Liz is going to join us a little late.
Got it. Jeff Newman. I think I saw you on the call.
I'm here.
Good morning. Marty Baker.
Good morning, all.
Elizabeth Hughes. I think I saw Elizabeth on the call as well.
Yes, I saw her join.
Roland Agbade. Leah Renzi.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Pete Lesher. John Kennard. Nick Redding.
I'm here.
Good morning. Jonathan Hughes.
Good morning, President.
Good morning. Marianne Harms.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Natalie Chabot.
Good morning, all. Here.
Bob Campbell. And Dennis Doster.
Good morning, everyone.
I think I did see actually Bob on the call. If you,
That's good too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe Hillary Bell is with us as well for DNR.
Got it.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, great, thanks.
Wonderful. We do have
We
quorum.
have quorum. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome everyone. Great to see you all virtually. It's always better when we see each other in person, but we will do our best here. Let's go ahead and start with the introduction of new members. I missed it. Is Jeff Newman here? Yes, I see you, Jeff. So welcome, Jeff. Why don't you say a few words about yourself? You are basically acting as the designated representative of Acting Secretary Rye with the Maryland Higher Education Commission. You want to introduce yourself further?
Sure, I'm the Assistant Secretary for Finance and Administration here at MHEC. I've been here for several years, and I'm happy to be participating on behalf of Acting Secretary Rye and the Maryland Higher Education Commission.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. And whatever we can do to help ensure that you're up to speed and familiar with all of the great work here, let us know. The second new member we have is Jonathan Hughes. Jonathan, are you with us?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Jonathan Hughes, and my apologies. I actually just got done with the surgery, so I'm present, I'm active, but I probably won't be showing my camera because I'm a little bit out of it, but I am definitely active, so my apologies in advance. As I indicated earlier, my name is Jonathan Hughes. I am the principal of Deer Park Middle Magnet School. I'm located in Baltimore County, Maryland. Randallstown is the city in which I'm located. I'm so excited to be a part of this committee, and I'm looking forward to doing some great things.
Great. Thank you and welcome. And I hope you heal well. And thank you so much for making the effort to be on board with us here today. So once again, anything that we can do to help our new members become oriented, let us know. Please reach out to the staff. So we're still waiting on 2 more vacant slots. As everyone's aware, with new administrations, things turn over. So we're in touch with the appointments office and working on filling those additional slots that are to be confirmed by the governor. And then we also have one other action that relates to membership, which is, as per the bylaws, we will, as a membership, go through a nomination election process for a vice chair. Bob has so graciously served in that role and is perfectly willing to continue to serve in that role, which we would welcome. But we also want to welcome any folks that may want to put their name forward and be considered. And so what I'll do at this point is open up for nominations from the floor for the vice chair position of the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority. Please put your name forth if you are interested or have questions also.
Can I nominate Bob Campbell?
That would be perfectly fine. Thank you, Marty. Are there other nominations? And please feel free. I mean, this should be a very open process. And if someone, has an interest, please let us know.
I think Bob has done an extraordinary job in leading us, and I concur. Let us nominate him for another term.
Okay, wonderful. So that's a second for that nomination. Okay, well, hearing no other nominations, and keep in mind, this is a process that we'll go through every year. So if someone is thinking about it, we will actually ensure that we reach out in advance so that people can consider that. Not that we don't all like Bob, but just want to make sure there's opportunity for all. And so this is a process that we will follow the bylaws and go through again in the future. So with that nomination out there, and I'm hearing no others, I'd like to, we've had a motion and a second actually for that. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hands, there's too many hands, it's too hard. Let me put it this way. Is there anyone not in favor or anyone that would like to abstain? Okay. And that's probably how I'll move through our approvals so we can make it easier in terms of trying to see all the hands out there. So great. Well, that motion passes. Thank you, Bob, for being willing to serve in that role again. And I dearly appreciate it because I know there will be times where I won't be able to be here for the entire meeting or portions of the meeting. I will always do my best, but knowing that we've got a very capable vice chair is I'm grateful for. So thank you very much. Okay, well, we can move into the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes. And by resolution, our wonderful staff has prepared us. And so I am going to take a motion for approval of the April 13th minutes as presented.
Pete Lesher, I'll move resolution R200.
Thank you, Pete. A second for that. You want a second?
Natalie Chabot, I'll second that.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, any questions about the minutes, corrections, anything anyone has an issue with? Okay, great. None being, then anyone want to abstain from that approval?
I will abstain.
Thank you. Not being there. Okay, anyone in opposition for any reason? No. Okay, then I will presume that the minutes are approved as presented. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving right along to the management report. Any of you that were on the call with me last time know that I will keep this meeting moving. So we have plenty of time for the meaty stuff that we need to discuss. And this is a big agenda today. We have a lot of really important items. So we're going to move straight on into the management report. Let's go ahead and get through the report, and then we'll have some time for some questions at the end of the report, I think would be the best thing. So if you do have questions, please hold them, and we'll do them after we're through the full management report. So Ariane, are you kicking that off? Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Secretary Flora. I'm happy to give the management report. Just a few quick housekeeping things before we dive into that. One, if you don't already, please put your microphones on mute. It just helps with feedback. And wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this session and it is being streamed live. So with that, the management report, our first item is the MHA Financing Fund report. And Martha, if you could pull up that document. In your briefing materials, you will see that we are proposing a new format for reporting on the financing fund, and it looks like this. For members who were on the authority prior to this year, you'll recall that the previous report was a long spreadsheet that included all of the appropriation expenses for the entire program going back to 1997. So this revised version is a summary dashboard, if you will, of the income and expenses for both the current year, which you see on the left, and the aggregate over the life of the program, which is on the right. The amount remaining in the finance fund is highlighted in yellow at the bottom right of the document. At this time, we're reporting $243,717.80. This is significantly higher than the $50,000 that was reported back in April. Our finance staff is still closing out fiscal year 23. This report does not include fiscal year 24 numbers, but that $243,000 number is still being confirmed. But we believe that the increase is mostly due to the fact that there were unspent operating funds from when the program was down to just one employee in fiscal years 21 and 22, and that money carried over into our fiscal year 23 financing fund, bringing this amount up to where it is. As I said, it does not reflect 24 appropriation or the grants that you'll be reviewing for approval later in this meeting. And numbers reflect where we were as of May 20th, 2023, right before our finance manager went out on maternity leave. So we weren't able to get these any closer, but we will have revised numbers for you that will include fiscal year 24 the next time we report on the financing fund. Just to let everyone know, each of the line items that you see on this dashboard is linked to a detailed spreadsheet that I can provide upon request. All the information that was in the previous report has been transferred to this summary and the backup details. So we have all of that information and are happy to share it if you'd like more information on that.
Thank you, Ariana. I'm going to take back my earlier comment because anytime we're dealing with numbers, I feel like everyone should have a chance to weigh in at this point. So, let's go ahead and see if there are any questions specific to
just one other reminder to finish out the financing fund is that for fiscal year 24, I wanted to remind the authority that you did vote to have $100,000 in emergency funds set aside. So that will also be reflected in the next report, but it's not being reflected in this one.
I have a question. The supplemental that was received that the Heritage Areas advocated for, is that what number 2 is, the additional operating funds?
No, that is not reflected on this report.
I'd like to understand how the Heritage Areas are going to receive that. Is that going to be equally divided among them?
Nick, wait a minute. This is our next agenda item.
Nick, it's actually our next agenda item.
That's what I just asked. I said, is that number 2? And you said no.
Oh, you said 2. We weren't understanding you. We thought you meant row 2 or something.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Questions specific to this fund report and the format and the change and numbers, anything associated with this particular screen? Okay, great. We will move on now to the next item, which is the operating funds. So Ariane, and I'll jump in on this too as needed.
Sure. So the coalition successfully lobbied for additional operating funds for fiscal year 24. They received an over-the-target appropriation of $500,000. Because the funds were placed in the MDP budget and not MHAA's financing fund, we believe that they can be distributed without being held to the match requirement that's stipulated in the MHAA statute. We've identified a mechanism for distributing these funds that will include a simplified grant agreement and will result in equal one lump sum amounts of $38,462 to each of the heritage areas. And Secretary Flora, I know that you are in the final stages of confirming this with DPM and making sure that this approach agrees with them. So I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yes, thank you. First of all, congratulations for this advocacy effort. And, I think getting these funds into everyone's hands is certainly our foremost priority. As I have learned coming into state government, never as easy as you would hope for. because statute does have a matching requirement, we had to basically get an interpretation on that, ensure that that would not apply to this particular instance. That interpretation was not what I would have hoped for. So we were finding other ways to kind of still proceed. And so we have been in conversations with Department of Budget Management and trying to get final validation and confirmation that we can simply move these funds forward. I am essentially waiting on that final confirmation I had actually hoped to have before this morning. But I'm very optimistic that we are going to be able to move this money forward without any red tape. It's certainly my priority, and be able to actually, get this money out there. I am just waiting on one more piece of confirmation before I can fully guaranteed say that, and that's just our reality. But that is the absolute priority, is to move that along. And so with that, I'll start with Nick in terms of any questions on this particular agenda item and report.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I saw Lucille ask the question. I have the same one. Is it going to be structured as a grant or an appropriation?
That I do not have the direct answer to. Ariana, have you had any particular guidance on that once we get through this last piece?
I think we're waiting on what you hear back from DBM before we make a comment on that.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And then can we just, I'm sure that you will, but can the authority get an update on this even mid-cycle as soon as there's a decision made on it?
Absolutely. Like I said, I had hoped to have it today. Things never move quite as fast as I would like, but that's been the priority actually, and it's taken far too long. But we will absolutely give you all an update as soon as we have it, and we'll start moving the money as soon as we have it also.
Cool, thank you.
Other questions on this? Because I know this is very important to all of the heritage areas. Great. Okay. Well, we'll just keep pushing on our end and get this money flowing. So Ariane, I'll let you get back to it then on the annual report.
Sure. Just on the right of this slide, you see that our annual report came out a couple months ago. Just wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to view it. We sent over email, and it's on our webpage. Please read through it. We were happy to get it out a little later than we would have liked this year for fiscal year 22. We are certainly going to be getting our annual report out sooner. We anticipate by the end of this calendar year. So just a little plug for that. And then for our fiscal 23 updates on grant agreements processed, I'm going to ask Andrew to give a report.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So the last time we talked, we let you all know that we were still in the process of working through the last of our fiscal year 23 grants. Well, I am more than happy to share that we have been able to successfully encumber all of our fiscal year 23 grants, despite the various challenges that we faced over the course of the year. That's 107 grants for around $5.1 million. And we absolutely could not have done it without the incredible assistance of the MHT grant staff, as well as our representatives from the Office of the Attorney General. It really was a big push for us to be able to encumber all of these grants despite the challenges that we faced. But this has really encouraged us to look ahead for fiscal year 24 and identify all sorts of ways we can ensure that we're getting these grants encumbered in a more timely manner and making the process overall a lot easier for our grantees. So really quite happy that we were able to get this done. It came right down to the wire, but I'm just glad to be here to share the good news that all of our grants for the previous year have been successfully encumbered.
Great. Questions for Andrew? Okay, wonderful. Great work, everyone. Getting those things processed and out the door. Thank you. Okay, next item, drum roll. I think big next big part of our work today. So we do have action items here coming up and presentations, I think, to walk everyone through the process for this, what has occurred here in the recommendations. So Ariane, do you want to kick us off with this?
Yes.
And I know we have additional comments also from the team involved in this, so I'll let it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, you'll see that we have various resolutions for approving the fiscal year 24 grants. This is because we have different types of grants and recusals that we have to take into consideration. Before we begin moving through each of these, Secretary Flora, you had asked that I just kind of give a brief explanation, especially because we have 5 or 6 new members that haven't been through the review process before. Just to give an overview of how the review and recommendation process works, I'll start by letting you know that we have 5 different types of grants that we administer. Capital and non-capital, which are essentially bricks and mortar and programming and interpretation grants. We often refer to these together as project grants. Any nonprofit organization, local jurisdiction, or state and federal government agency that has a project taking place in a heritage area can apply to either the capital or non-capital project grants. The other 3 types of grants that we offer are specifically for the heritage area management entities, and they include management, marketing, and block grants. Management grants are essentially operating funds. Marketing are for specific marketing activities, and block grants are our pass-through grants that we give to the heritage areas that they turn around and grant as mini or seed grants to organizations in their area. The project grants, the capital and non-capital, have a 2-tiered review process. One that takes place at the local level via panels that are put together within each of the 13 heritage areas. And then at the larger level, we have one statewide grants review panel. The state grants review panel reviews all of the capital and non-capital project applications that have been submitted, whereas the local panel just reviews the grants from their specific area. Both the local and state panel scores are combined, and we have a specific algorithm that we use to generate a ranked list of projects for consideration. And then the grants review panel at the state level spends a great deal of time, including 2 days, discussing and making final decisions on the projects that are being put forward to all of you today for recommended funding. Excuse me, Secretary Flora, you also asked if I could speak just a little bit to the composition of the grants review panel. It is comprised of 35 members across the state of Maryland. And starting in 2020, the name of the group changed from the Technical Advisory Committee to the current grants review panel. The shift was in composition. We went from being primarily a state agency panel of representatives to a more open public recruitment of community members and professionals. So our emphasis in recruiting members for the grants review panel is on promoting diverse backgrounds and perspectives and putting more decision-making into the hands of the public. We try very hard to have at least one, but there are often more than one representative from each of the heritage areas on the state grants review panel. There are some exceptions year to year, but we do make every effort to make that happen. The panelists represent a cross-section of experts and community leaders in the fields of historic preservation, museums, interpretation, recreation and trails, technology, project management, grants management, archives, humanities, so on and so forth. Panel members were asked to self-identify. Not all responded, but for those that did, we can report 51% female, 34% male. There was 14% that provided no information. 26% identified African American, 6% Asian American, Asian or Chinese, 3% Hispanic or Chicana, 3% Native American, 3% South Asian American, and 46% white Caucasian, and 14% did not respond. So that's a quick overview of the grants review panel. To give everyone just an idea of how our process works. For the management marketing grants, they are reviewed by 2 smaller panels that are comprised of members from the authority. And the block grants are reviewed by staff, Andrew, Martha, and myself. So the first resolution that we have before us is for the management marketing and block grants. And then we'll move into the project grants and the resolutions for recusals. Are there any questions before we proceed?
Thank you, Ariane. So let's break it down into, obviously, as this resolution suggests, first of all, the management, marketing, and block grants. And that is basically all of the heritage areas included in this list here. So one resolution specific to all of those. Let's start with the motion, and then we'll have any discussions. Do I have a motion for approval as per this resolution?
Melissa Archer here. I'll move resolution R300 for the management, marketing, and block grants.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Nick Redding.
Thank you. Now I'll open it up for discussion, questions specific to these particular grants.
And just to add, the attachment that went out with the briefing materials did have a list of these included. We can pull that up on the screen if you all would like, but hopefully everyone had a chance to view these.
Yes, and thank you for very thorough package of materials again, as always, but I do want to make sure that if people have questions, clarifications, anything that you may want to raise at this point, that we do that before I call for the vote.
This is Marianne Harms. I noticed the figure 47,500 kept reappearing, going down, the monies that were awarded or not awarded. Is there significance to that specific amount?
So Marianne, that applies to the project grant, so maybe it's more appropriate for us to talk about that in the next resolution, but we do have a reason for that.
Yeah, if you would address that, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else specific to the management, marketing, and block grants? Okay, then I'm going to call for a vote. Anyone need to abstain from this vote? Okay. Anyone opposed to approval? Anybody in opposition? Then I will presume that everyone present is in support of this particular resolution, and we will approve as stated here in resolution R300. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all the work behind going into this, and congratulations to all of the grantees. Okay, so the next one is very specific to the project grants, which is our next resolution, and we do have Kevin McDonald. Kevin, thank you very much for the work you do and for the review panel to provide us with some additional comments and introduction to your process and the recommendations. So Kevin?
Absolutely. Thank you, Secretary Flora, and hi to all the members of the authority. I'm Kevin McDonald. I was the chair of the panel this year and last, and so I'm here to present some of our recommendations. This is my 4th year serving on the panel, and it's absolutely always one of the highlights of my year. So thanks for letting me continue to contribute. But I just want to highlight a handful of the great projects and talk about a little bit of the process this year. So we put forward 69 projects for funding, totaling just under $3.25 million in awards. This is out of 163 total applications and over $8 million in funding requests. So the funding itself is split about 2/3 towards capital projects, which funds about 30 projects in total, and about 1/3 of the total funding to non-capital projects, which funds 39 projects. So all heritage areas saw a minimum of 30% of their asks funded, and all areas had their top 2 projects receive funding, with most areas received all of their top 3 projects receiving funding. The panel really did its utmost this year to make sure that funding was distributed as equitably as possible across heritage areas while still honoring the panel scores and local rankings, and obviously the constraints of our budget. So I have to give kudos to Ariane, Andrew, and Martha for running a really great and logistically efficient process this year. We met over the course of 2 panel meetings and got farther in our first panel meeting than we have in the last 4 years, largely due to the incredible management of the process on their end. So yeah, it is a great process every year. I do want to speak to the question of why 47,500 was a recurring figure. So in an effort to stretch our dollars as far as possible, the panel voted to remove portions of projects that were being funded at the full $100,000 amount or full $50,000 amount which is the capital limit and the non-capital limit, to take off, about 5 or 10% from the top of those in order to create a pool of additional funding, just to get more projects funded, and to try and get more grants into the world. So that is a decision we made this year to help stretch our funding. One other factoid was the average ask this year was about $10,000 higher than last year. So we were really dealing with a lot of high need projects. So I want to take just a moment to quickly shout out just 5 of the amazing, almost 70 projects we're putting forward for funding, just to serve some examples of the really great, diverse projects across the state of Maryland that we're putting forward. So first up is the #1 project overall. This was the highest ranking project from our panelists and the #1 choice from the Beach to Bay Heritage area. The project was a request from the Pocomoke Indian Nation for $13,000, which will go towards improving heritage resources about Indigenous lifeways, which is going to include print materials, lifeway demonstrations, curriculum resources, and portable curated exhibits that can travel between organizations and community partners. Another great project that was really urgent this year was one from Mountain, Maryland, and it was the Garrett County Historical Society. We're putting forward a capital project grant for just above $60,000 for the protection of the collection. The existing roof, electrical wiring, and floor conditions present possible hazards to staff and visitors, and the 22,000 artifacts held in the Historical Society's collection. So these capital improvements have really direct benefits to the longevity of that great collection, and can hopefully help bring even more folks together around the narratives held in the artifacts there, and increase the accessibility of the space for visitors. Another great project came from the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation, awarded at $90,000, the #2 project for the Chesapeake Crossroads Heritage Area. This is a project to help a land acquisition near the historic Elktonia Beach, which was an African-American beach during the Jim Crow era. The land specifically will become the future home of the Elktonia Heritage Cultural and Historical Center, which is going to be a really valuable resource for interpreting Black history in Anne Arundel County and in Maryland. Switching gears to something a little bit more raucous, we were able to award $24,000 to the This Could Go Boom Music Festival. This was the #3 choice for the Anacostia Trails Heritage Area. This is a really exciting new music festival to be held in historic Greenbelt that will focus on women, trans, and non-binary performers and musicians, as well as an interpretation about the roles of those performers in the musical history of the region, from music's role in the fight for women's suffrage to the Riot Grrrl movement. MHA doesn't get a lot of projects that explicitly relate to LGBT history, and I was really excited that we were able to provide some funding for this project. It just seems like a really, really cool festival, so catch me out there next year. Hopeful that more projects in this vein can be forthcoming in future years. And finally, a really unique project that a lot of our panelists felt was kind of just a charming example of a quintessentially MHA project. The National Dentistry Museum is recommended for just about $25,000 worth of funding for an exhibit titled Baltimore, the Birthplace of the Dental Profession. I, for one, had no idea about this history before we discussed this in our panel, but this funding will support a host of interpretive supplies and interactives that will help explore the key people and places that led to the establishment of dentistry as a profession, and the growth of Baltimore City as a national and international leader in dentistry. So, as with every year, I'm honored to serve on the panel and put forward these recommendations. So thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for the time that you put in this group. I've served on these kinds of reviews before, and it is an intensive but very fun process, because it is fascinating to dig in to all these projects, and sadly there's just never enough money to fund more, but those are hard decisions that do have to be made in this process. And so there's just so much information we could share, but I think because everyone did receive the full list of the projects, the spreadsheets, the accounting, everything on this, what I'd like to do is take a motion for resolution R400. If we can get a first and second, then we will again open up for discussion, questions, information. So do we have a motion as stated in R400 here, for approval of these project grants that are recommended by the committee.
Pete Lesher, I'll so move.
Thank you, Pete. Do we have a second?
Second, Bob Campbell.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, then I'm going to open it up for discussion or questions before we call for the vote on this whole group of project grants. Pete.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering, and just thank you, Kevin, and to the whole panel for your work on this. I've been on these panels in the past. I know how much goes into this, and I have a deep appreciation for the work and the hard decisions. And so I'd love for your explanation a little bit. Of course, where the dividing line comes between those that are fully funded and partially funded and those that are on the reserve list, that always sort of sorts out. That's where the hard choices lie. The ones at the top, those are easy. The ones at the bottom, kind of easy. But where you draw the line is always difficult. So the top 64 are either fully or partially funded. 65 and 66 end up on the reserve list. And then we 67, and we get a few others down the line that are partially funded: 77, 78, 94, and 122. You explained number 122. This could go boom. And I note that a lot of these that are farther down the list may have been lower on their overall ranking, but some of them had a high local ranking. Number 94 was number 1 locally ranked. Number 122 was number 3 locally ranked. So number 77 was 2 locally ranked. You've provided the explanation for that. The one that doesn't quite fit that was number 78, the Cunningham Falls application, which landed at 78 overall, number 12 locally ranked. Compared to 65 and 66, which had 8 and 10 local ranks. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us how you made those hard choices around those lines.
Sure. I believe with Cunningham Falls, and Ariane, Andrew, Martha, help me out if my memory is failing on this. That was kind of at the very end of our process. We had a little bit left over, and we really wanted to fund something that was kind of on that micro scale with the remains of the funding that we had available, just to get one more project kind of on its way. And I believe Cunningham Falls was put forward by a panelist as a suggestion for that. We really do rely on our panelists to make suggestions when we have small amounts like that. Does anyone have a project that we, can get most of the way across the finish line with these remaining funds? And our panelists who know their grants really well will put forward stuff that's kind of on that, $5,000 is not micro to a lot of people, but compared to $100,000 asks, we try and fill our gaps as efficiently as possible. And I do also want to lift up Liz Shadow's comment. Heart of the Civil War had 30 applications, so ranked 12th overall is not actually low. It's on the upper, third at least of sort of what they're looking at. So I hope that's satisfactory.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you both. Nick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. I'll go a step further beyond Pete. I'm a little concerned. I think that the committee obviously did great work, and I don't want to take away from that at all with the parameters given. But I do share this concern about local priorities, and then we see, for example, a local that was number 1 but state ranked 110, or a local number 1 state ranked 61, and there's sort of this give and take between the state review, but at the same time we put a great amount of trust in the local heritage areas. And I personally lean towards seeing preservation as a local effort, and that all preservation happens locally. And I put a great amount of trust in our heritage area leaders to tell us what are the things that are the top priorities to them. And so I'm a little remiss to see that. And I understand the rating and ranking that is happening. I also understand that this is brought to the authority sort of as not pre-baked, but here it is. But I don't know if this is just sort of an existential rub within the program that can either be addressed by continued conversation or would be addressed legislatively. But I'm a little concerned about that, and also seeing number one priorities not fully funded. I understand the desire to move things around, but coming from the nonprofit side, where if that 50,000 is what you're budgeting for, and that's really what you need, sometimes getting 47, or in one case asking for 100 and getting 80, even though it was a number one priority, can mean the difference between a project happening and not happening. So I actually would amend the motion to say that we're going to fully fund all number one priorities as a way of the authority to suggest the desire to move things around. But coming from the nonprofit side, where that would be if that 50,000 is what you're budgeting for, and that's really what you need, sometimes getting 47, the balance out amongst the lower priority projects. I think that the committee did a great job, and I think everything that they funded is great, but I can't be the only one, and I know Pete kind of brought it up, that shares this concern.
Nick, if I could just address some of those concerns, and Kevin, if you certainly want to jump in, please do, but the grants review panel made the decision to reduce the capital grants and the non-capital grants that were around the 100,000 marks and the 50,000 marks, so that we could get more money to more grantees. If we didn't do those reductions, then less projects would have been funded. We had a lot of projects that came in at their maximum amounts. So the priority was to try and fund more projects given the amount of applications and one of the highest levels of requests that we've had in the last 4 years. I want to assure you that for all of the projects that were reduced, we took special effort to check to see if those projects could still proceed with reduced funding. We did specific reach outs to confirm that partial funding would be sufficient for them to be able to proceed. And we also looked very carefully at budgets to see if there were things that could still appropriately be funded with those reductions. So
I appreciate that. I think that's good. I'm glad to hear that work was put into it. I still philosophically think that our heritage areas and the heritage area directors know their communities best, and what they rank as number one should be given a high degree of deference. And that from an advocacy perspective, if we don't have enough money to fund all of these things, and that's a great message to carry to the General Assembly to say that we need $9 million in the fund. But reducing projects, making things a little bit more difficult to move forward, people can disagree with me, that's fine, and we can pass the motion as is, but I'd like to make that amendment.
we would also have to reconvene if we were to proceed with your recommendation, because it would set off an entire domino effect of us having to recalculate all of our list of grants and go through a separate review process to be able to redistribute those funds in the way that you suggest. Just to let the authority know, it's not as simple as us just changing the spreadsheet. We would have to reconvene the committee to make those decisions.
So, but it at the risk of just being a little cynical and asking, then why is it brought for a vote? If we have concerns about it and you're asking us to make an actual vote based on our understanding of this and the way that we approach this, and we decide in another way, and the answer is, well, that would create a lot of problems. So the expectation is that this is just going to be voted yes.
Well, let me interject here. Thank you for your proposed amendment to the motion. I think what I'm hearing is more of a process question, which would mean an amendment to the process. And to amend the process itself after the fact, I don't believe would be appropriate. If we want to look at the process and how the process is approached moving forward in the next round, I think that that's certainly up for discussion. But I also would like to get the other comments of the hands raised to see what other comments we have regarding this particular motion. So Pete, I think you were next in the queue, followed by Andrew and followed by Melissa.
Thank you. And let me respond in part to Nick with a little bit of perspective from my time on the panel. One of the things that I noted about how the ranking process has changed this year is an increase in weight given to the local rank. It was formally done that what guided the final decisions was the statewide ranking, period. And one of the means, one of the scores or one of the considerations that was taken into fact at the state level was what is the local rank. But that simply got baked into the state ranking. Now the state ranking stands independently and is the two score, the statewide and local score are added up. This gives added weight to the local rank, and on top of that, the fact that we're digging down to the reserve list to, digging down below that line between those funded and those in the reserve list to pull up some number ones and number twos, I think is showing a lot of deference to the local ranking process beyond what we've had here in the past, and I do want to give my compliments to those who redesigned this process to have that effect. It did make a difference this year, and I took a close look at that in the way the scores fell out.
Thank you, Pete. I have Andrew next in the queue.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to note in terms of how the actual algorithm works very briefly, just to provide additional context, that when we do combine these scores, the local and state rankings, we are actually giving priority to the local rankings. I completely agree that the Heritage Area Directors really are the folks who know their communities the strongest, which is why I think it's so important that their scores are considered with more significance. Right? I think that that's really critical since they understand the folks that they're serving. So as it currently stands, our algorithm takes into account their scores at a percentage of 65 and the state scores at a percentage of 35. So they are currently ranked ahead of the state scores.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I have Melissa next in my queue.
Yeah, thank you. I just, a comment and a question. I also shared concern about cutting down the max requests to the 47,500 or 80,000 if they were requesting 100,000. Coming from a sister agency that also does a lot of grants administration, I advocate for the same thing in my department, that we should fully fund fewer projects for a couple of reasons. We find frequently that our awardees struggle to make up the gap, and it stalls projects. Then we have to, fund projects over multiple phases, sometimes for 5 years, in order for them to finally, chip away at it and complete the project. Meanwhile, the capital costs go up. And so there are all these cost overruns, and it ends up taking longer and costing more. And it also puts a big strain on our agency, because then they're having to come in and request extensions and modifications to make the projects work. And so that led to my second question, is your staff capacity, because the more projects that you fund at a lower level, that's more grant agreements, that's more administrative, more requests for payments, more strain on the legal office to review all these agreements. So I just wanted to make sure that how does the number of awards this year compare to previous years, and your goal of doing things quicker, better, faster?
Thank you.
Do you want me to address that right now, or do you want to wait, Secretary?
Let's get all the rest of the questions, I think, and comments and recommendations on the table here. So I have Natalie had your hand up. Is it still up, Natalie?
Yes.
Yes. Natalie, next.
You want me to go ahead? Well,
Yes.
I think my question has changed. Do we have input from the heritage areas that we are discussing? You know what I'm saying? Some believe that we should fully fund what the heritage areas have prioritized. How do the heritage areas feel about this process? Is it improving every year? And what is their perspective? Do we have that information?
I think it's a really good question that we can only assess as a follow-up to this, because each year we have a process that we enter into, and we can keep adapting that process based on continual feedback. Ariana, I believe that the process that we implemented this year, I'm sure was based on some of that continual feedback, but do you want to address that one?
Sure. The heritage areas, in addition to doing their local reviews with their panels, providing their scores, they put together a ranking letter that is put forward to the state review panel. And that ranking letter lays out why they scored and ranked their projects that they did. They also have the opportunity to present that letter to the grants review panel. And then they also sit in on the 2 grants review panel meetings where the decisions are being made and are often turned to help answer questions and provide more information and feedback. So they are part of the process. And, I can think of one example where we had a heritage area that did help us confirm that a project could move forward at a reduced amount. So they are certainly part of the conversation and provide very valuable information throughout every stage of the process.
Great. Thank you, Ariana. I want to get to the rest of the queue. I have Bob and then Rebecca in the queue right now. Bob?
Well, I just want to concur and offer my respect for the, for Nicholas's call out of the local priorities. Obviously, that's important. We've tried to elevate it. I can't see any instance where a number 1 ranked priority hasn't been funded or partially funded. So I'll just remind us that another thing that we asked the panel to do, and are empowered to do, is to assess the budgets themselves. And sometimes the budget is presented is not all appropriate. They have to look at whether it's allowable, allocable, reasonable, and those things might well have affected changes in some instances as well. And if that's the case, then that is appropriate to suggest reductions in the budget.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Rebecca? Are you on mute? Rebecca, are you out there? I thought I saw your hand up. Do not see that. Okay, so we'll move on. All of these comments, discussions, questions, I think are all wonderful. And I feel like a lot of it is about clearly the process. And so there was a process that was implemented this year. I think we can always be in a point of building on that process and making recommendations for how we approach it next year. But I'm going to take one more comment from Nick based on all of this, and then I am going to call for a vote. So, Nick?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear, I'm not really talking about the process the minute the process played out. I'm talking about what's been laid before us. So my motion is not on the process. My motion to amend is based on the grants before us. I do think one interesting comment here that was not addressed from Bridget was, what about the funding balance? If we have additional funding balance, why not use that? And I could even amend the amendment to say that we're going to pull in enough of that to fully fund the number 1 priorities.
Okay. So right now we have a motion and a second. So someone help me out. I haven't looked at my Robert rules for a while, but I also believe we have another motion being put forward by Nick that would need to have a second in it in order for us to move forward for a vote. Is that, so I'm going to put forth, Nick, your specific motion or amendment to this motion is what?
That I move that we amend the motion as presented to fully fund all number 1 priorities of the local heritage areas by, as necessary, drawing on the reserve fund of the Maryland Heritage Area Financing Authority.
Okay, so that is the amended motion. I would need to have a second to that amended motion in order for it to move forward. Is there a second?
don't we need to understand what the implication of that
think-
is?
I think Ariane has noted that the implications are quite massive.
Yeah. And I would just add, for us to pull from the financing fund, we would need to check statute. We need to check our regulations to see, how those funds can be applied. I know that they're generally set aside for emergency purposes. I would need to double check language. I think there's a lot more to this that we would need to look into to be able to even consider it.
So is there a second to this motion? If not, then the motion fails and we go back to the original motion. I'm not hearing a second. So I'm going to go back to the original resolution where we had a first and a second. Ariane or whoever's recording that, who was our first and second on that motion? The original motion? Have we recorded who the first and the second was at the original?
Sure, Andrew's checking it right now.
Okay.
Pete and Bob.
Yeah.
Pete and Bob. Okay, so we had a first and a second on this resolution. I would like to call for a vote on this particular resolution as identified here. Anyone first in opposition to approving this resolution? I see no one in opposition. Anyone who would like to abstain from approving this resolution as stated? Then I will move forward to say that the resolution is approved by all voting members that are present at this point in time. Thank you. Really great discussion and I think comments raised. This is a process that obviously is very important, very complicated, and how it moves forward. I feel good personally about the process when I asked and heard about the committee and how it all unfolds. One thing that I think we could do better is to actually have slides that very specifically show that process better in terms of how does the local rank fold into the state rank to get the total rank. I think, the more we can understand about the process and the validity of it. So I would like to have that in preparation for next year, be detailed in more detail at the next meeting. I would like to have the opportunity for comments, questions, discussion of that at the next meeting, because I really want to ensure that everyone can feel positive about this very important process and the hard work of the committee when they enter into it and ensure that they have the full support of the process that they're putting time into. So if we could have that at the next meeting for everyone, when we're not in this intense moment of trying to approve these projects so that they can move forward, I think that would be a good time to start that early on. So I'm going to ask that staff. And I see Natalie has her hand raised. I'll take a couple more comments specific to this approval, and then we'll move on to the next one. So Natalie?
Your suggestion on follow-up, would that include sort of an opinion or input from the Heritage Area Coalition?
We can absolutely. I think now that the projects will be ultimately announced, I don't see any reason why. And I want to say that the heritage areas certainly are involved in terms of the coalition. I feel it's very important to get comments, but ultimately we have to make a decision. So we can certainly include those comments in that process before our October meeting.
I've been on this authority for a while, and often the coalition, the representation is at the meeting, but we don't often refer to them. We could ask them, but we talk amongst ourselves as the authority while they're there as a resource. And I think that's why they participate and take the time. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And obviously we have business that we have to get through in these meetings. But I think we certainly encourage the chat. We also include follow-up in terms of just the coalition is welcome to provide us with a summary set of recommendations that we can certainly include. But at the same time, we have to run the meeting. And so I think we're trying to balance there. But thank you for that, Natalie. Okay, we have 2 more questions on this topic, and then we'll move to the next one. Bob and then Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll just add this as editorial comment. My affirmative vote is predicated on confidence that the review committee has given the attention to budget reductions that I am assuming they did, right? That if they were making reductions, there were justifiable reasons for it, and that there was the ability still to proceed. Ariane spoke to that. I don't lack confidence in that, but since there is a suggestion that a reduction of budget is perhaps some less than glowing support for a project, then I suppose we should just refer to the future and say, ask our committee to give the full attention to budget reductions and be sure that those reductions are fully justified and necessary in order for the grant to be approved. That if the budget cannot be amended, corrected, addressed in some ways, the alternative is that they're not going to be approved.
Right. I think thank you for that, Bob. I see we had one more hand up in the queue. Elizabeth, you probably want to respond to Bob. I want to make sure we get this other last question in. Was it, and I lost my cue, was it Melissa that had her hand up, or was it Rebecca? Lost the hand up signal. I'm not seeing it out there. So
It wasn't me.
Just go to Elizabeth to respond to Bob, and then I'm going to move it along.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure if this is a respond to Bob, but just generally regarding this issue, I think it would be helpful for the authority, and maybe this is what you're suggesting, to address this at the next meeting while it's still fresh in everyone's mind, as far as, is the authority going to put forward certain sort of parameters for when we're reviewing grants next? This is, the discussion we're having now is not new. It has happened for a very long time when we have these grant approvals. So it's helpful to know in advance if the authority wants to take a position such as we will, as a policy in the next grant round, fully fund all projects and not seek reductions, or that we will across the board fund the number one heritage area, prioritized project. Having that kind of decision up front, I think, would be very helpful so that the committee isn't wasting its time, going in a direction that in the end, the authority is going to challenge. So I think having that guidance up front would be helpful, and doing it soon while we're still have this all very fresh in our minds.
Agreed, Elizabeth, and that's what I've asked for us to do at the October meeting, and I think it seemed that those were the 2 big issues I was hearing, but we'll review the notes and the comments. I think as a follow-up to this meeting internally, and then make sure we've got those sort of core issues that came up today, I think, out on the table for discussion at the next meeting. And so with that, I am going to move us along. I appreciate everyone's input on this, and I promise you we will have that on the agenda for the next meeting so we can get out in front of this earlier for next round. And there's never going to be a perfect approach. And I do want to thank again Kevin and in the committee for all of your hard work, because I know this is a very difficult process and you are implementing what you are handed in the way of criteria. And so we do appreciate all of your time and work with the committee and the full panel. So thank you again. Okay, next item is specifically these particular projects that we're going to be voting on independently, starting with R500. Ariane, is there anyone that wants to review this on the staff side or provide any background on this one?
No, the next 4 are simply being put forward. These are project grants that we have to vote on separately because we had individuals that needed to be recused, so they could not be part of the larger vote.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah. Okay, so these are really all part of that project grant approval. It's just that these have reclusos involved. So we'll just take each of these independently then. So I need a motion to approve resolution 500, the specific project, and then as part of that vote, those that have to recluse themselves should be noted in the minutes. And so motion to approve this.
So moved. This is Marty.
Marty, thank you. Second.
Natalie, I'll second it.
Natalie, thank you. And then for the record, anyone who is abstaining, recusing himself of this particular vote, please note that. And then now, can you forth your names?
Marianne Harms.
Marianne, thank you, Marianne. Anyone else that's on that list? Okay. Okay, so as we've been doing, anybody further abstaining? Anyone opposed? Motion passes then. And we'll go to the next one, which is resolution 600, Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. Stories from the Shoreline Project. Once again, I'll take a motion to approve. Don't be shy. Thanks, Bob. Second. Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone abstaining or reclusing themselves from this vote?
Pete Lesher.
Pete, thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Okay, anyone in opposition? Motion passes. Thank you. So the next one, Resolution 700, Talbot County Economic Development and Tourism. Motion to approve. Natalie, second.
Moved. I mean, seconded.
Thank you, Melissa. Trying to see all the different names here all at once on this process. Okay, and who do we have that would like to recluse himself or abstain? That would be Pete. Anyone else? Okay, anyone in opposition? Hearing none, this resolution also passes. Next one. Resolution 800, and this would be the grant to the Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum. Motion to approve.
So moved.
First by Bob, second by Mary Ann. Anyone that would like to abstain, thereby reclusing themselves from the vote? Someone out there?
Oh, Elizabeth, but I think her volume is not working.
Okay, so Elizabeth would be noted there. Anyone in opposition? Motion passes. Resolution 800 passes. Okay, on to resolution 900, and this is the revised scope of work. And I will turn it to Ariane, who's presenting this on your end.
Actually, Martha Waldron is going to present this amendment for all of you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm happy to provide a little bit of information about the requested revised scope of work for an FY23 MHAA capital grant from the B'nai Israel congregation. This is a grant that was approved last year by all of you. And as protocol suggests, when there is a scope of work change that goes beyond what the authority initially approved, we ask for it to come in front of the authority once again for approval. So the B'nai Israel congregation was originally approved to work on facility improvements that supported the cost of repairs to the first floor of the property, which included an installation of storm windows and an HVAC system. The proposed scope of work, and I'm glad to introduce Rick Gwynn Allen, who is here from the B'nai Israel congregation to provide additional context and to answer any questions, but the proposed new scope of work would essentially remove the storm windows from the scope and instead include electrical repairs throughout the property. and then continue with the replacement of the HVAC system. The B'nai Israel congregation is located in the Baltimore National Heritage Area. It's a beautiful and incredibly historic synagogue located in Jonestown, just north of downtown. And I will turn it over to Rick to provide any additional context and answer any questions.
Martha, thank you, and thank you all for considering this change. We're a small synagogue with a lot of different needs, as historical buildings do, and over the course of the time since we got the grant, we've also been able to secure a federal grant and a state grant for the storm windows and some individual donors. So faced with some electrical issues that we've had for a long time and no other funder for it, in the balance of all our grants, we thought that if you all were willing to let us use some of this money for electrical repairs, we would still be able to get the storm windows done, at the same time. So that's why we're coming to this point. Essentially, there is no other donor for something as unsexy as electrical stuff. And yet we've known this problem was coming, for some time. But in the last year, we've had a couple of fairly significant electrical problems that we've had to deal with. And so working with Cove Electric, who has worked with us for quite a long time, we wanted to propose getting this work done at this time. So that's about all I can add to it, unless people had, questions about the synagogue itself or, the people who came to this decision. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we're really looking at simply a change in the scope, not the budget. And I would like to take a motion for approval. We have Bob and Rebecca with questions prior to the motion. We can do that. Bob?
No, I was just going to speak in favor of it. My question would have been why the replacement. I understand we're not replacing. We're still getting the full scope of needed restorations addressed. We're funding a different part of it. I find that a comfortable answer.
Okay, great. Thank you. So do we have, I'm sorry, Rebecca, you had your hand up too. I think that's it. So do I have a motion to approve?
This is Natalie, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second. Marty.
Marty, thank you very much. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion passed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Look forward to maybe seeing it sometime. Thank you. Okay, next one up is sort of the last step in our projects here. So this is a resolution authorizing the staff to proceed with the documents necessary to carry out the grants that were just approved. And you have it in front of you here. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Melissa Archer, I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Melissa. Second?
Elizabeth Hughes, I'll second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions or discussion about the resolution? Marty?
I guess this seems like a new type of resolution, and I'm wondering why it was deemed necessary.
Good question. Anyone?
I believe we have Rianne from our OAG office on if she'd like to speak to that. It was her recommendation.
Rianne? Are you with us?
Maybe not.
Okay, I can.
Just said that it was a more concise way of, this was built into the previous resolutions, it was my understanding, and this was a more concise way of just summarizing it at the end into one resolution.
Okay. And I think it just certainly allows for the fact that as we get into these final documents and working with the grantees, there may always be minor adjustments that I would assume our council is just recommending that we allow for that through this resolution. So do I have a motion? We already have the motion first and second. Is anyone opposed to this motion or to this resolution? Abstention? Thank you, Rian. Okay. No opposition, no abstain, then the motion or the resolution passes as written. And Rian did put in the chat that our description was in fact accurate. So thank you. Okay, so well, I just want to send also a congratulations to all of the grantees. A lot of work went into on the application side, the review side, and a lot of work yet to be done to get all of these agreements and everything out the door. And so we will certainly try to do that as fast as possible, so everyone can keep moving forward with their projects. And hearty congratulations to all of those. And we look forward to working with you. So we have 3 discussion items here. I think we're still doing fairly well on time. So we want to make sure we have adequate time for each of these. And we'll just start with the strategic plan update. And who will be reporting on that one?
I'll be reporting, Secretary Flora. So thank you. The first 2 discussion items, we're seeking conversation and consensus from the authority. We didn't necessarily put anything forward for a vote, but you all can decide if you feel that things reach that point. For the strategic plan update, wanted to just give a brief background, and I will try and be quick because I know we're a little behind on time. The most recent strategic plan expired in 2020. An update was put on hold pending the completion of the racial equity work that was done over the last couple of years. As a separate government entity, MHA really does benefit from having its own strategic plan. It helps us measure our success. It also provides guidance to the heritage areas in their mandated management plans, and also to our grantees for setting goals as to what the program supports through the grant process. Next slide, please. So the plan moving forward, as we hope to move into our next phase of completing a new plan, will certainly continue to support the racial equity work that has been done thus far, and we'll talk about that next. The recommendations that were put forward that cannot be acted on immediately, we'd be recommending that they be included into the new strategic plan. And then as we're moving through the strategic planning process and speaking with stakeholders, we would certainly build in additional refinement to getting feedback on the outcomes of the racial equity work. Next slide. So for administering the program, we're proposing that it be overseen by staff, and that a working group of MHA members be appointed by the chair. Our bylaws do allow for non-authority members to also be participating on any working group that you may or may not decide to put forward. Funding permitting, we would recommend that we hire a consultant to help with some of the evaluations that are really better served by an external third party to help us with those analysis. The overall planning process is expected to take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. If we begin now, we could have it completed by early 2025 and in effect for the fiscal year 26 time period. The next slide is just a proposed timeline. I don't need to go line by line. It just really outlines that 12 to 18 month proposed phasing with the various steps that would be involved, including doing a SWOT analysis, reaching a finalized list of goals, including stakeholder feedback, and revising the plan, and then moving towards implementation, as I said, for fiscal year 26. Next slide. The other thing that we really want the strategic plan to do is obviously support the Moore-Miller administration's objectives and strategies. We also would be making sure that it aligns with the MDP strategic plan that I believe was just completed. Yes, Secretary Flora, congratulations.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Of course.
In process.
In process.
Yes, we would certainly want to support the MDP plan, and obviously the statewide preservation plan that's anticipated to be done at the end of this calendar year. So for next steps related to the strategic plan, we would welcome conversation and thoughts from all of you, but we're seeking consensus on being able to start the planning phase of the project today. and also gauging your interest in putting together a working group that would help assist with any RFP or hiring process related to the consultant, monitoring the project, providing feedback on the parameters of the planning process, and helping us ensure that there's equitable participation and representation from stakeholders.
Have some toast.
Great, thank you. So these are the items that you're basically asking of the authority, essentially, for us to move forward with the process. So I'm going to try to, I really want to make sure we have adequate time at the end for the coalition report and the director highlights. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of open this up for a short discussion, because we can also do a follow-up with everyone, I think electronically also, in terms of determining who might be interested in being part of the working group and the next steps in the process. So let me open up for discussion first of any questions or comments about the process that was just put forth to everyone that we'd be embarking on. Okay, that was easy. Anyone that would like to raise their hand right now, so that we know that you may be interested in being directly involved with this strategic planning working group, and we can follow up with you later too. So, Liz and Natalie, great, thank you. Okay, please feel free to put anything in the chat also, and we'll also do some follow-ups with everyone to make sure if folks really don't know what their job description is just yet, but might be interested, we can follow up with that. And then Natalie, I have your hand is up also. Are you on mute? Yes. Natalie, can you unmute?
I'm sorry. I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Just saw that hand there. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions about this process? You will be obviously hearing more, and we'll probably have a much more detailed update at the October meeting. And we'll follow up to see if anyone else might be involved. But any other immediate questions or comments that come to mind?
I'm seeing comments in the chat, and absolutely the coalition members will be very involved in this process. So thank you, Lucille, for expressing interest in participating.
Thank you. And I'm quite sure the staff usually does this, but let's make sure we copy all of the comments that we receive so that we have all of those available to us following the meeting. Okay, well, let's move to the next agenda item, which I really wanted to reserve time for, and that is the racial equity recommendations that came out of that group. And I think, as most of you know, we had a little start-stop because we lost our consultant, and have tried to move this forward because we really did want all of this great work and recommendations to be fully integrated into our strategic planning process. And so with that, I once again will turn it over to the staff to give a full quick summary, because we all had the information in advance, and ensure that we leave time for questions and discussion. So Ariane, do you want to do a brief overview, and then we can move on?
Yes, absolutely. So quick update, at the April authority meeting, we reported, as Secretary Flora just said, that our contract with our racial equity consultant, Symphonic Strategies, did end in February 2023. We did not get the final report that we had originally hoped for, but the draft report was very helpful in creating recommendations that were put forward to the Racial Equity Working Group, and they were reviewed by that group in April. Feedback was provided, and then what we're putting in front of you today are the 10 final recommendations. This is really the combination of a year's worth of work from various groups. The recommendations include information and recommendations that were put forward by the consultant. They include comments from the authority. They include staff input. They also include the Racial Equity Working Group and the Heritage Area comments as well. So some of these can be acted on in the next 12 months, and others are better suited to be included in the upcoming strategic plan. So we've laid out the 10 for you, and we'll turn it back over to you, Secretary Flora, how you'd like to move forward with these.
Yeah. Well, this work is very important, and this is only, I think, the beginning of how we integrate and thoughtfully consider each of these recommendations. So we are not looking for an actual action to approve necessarily, but we do need to thoughtfully consider how do we integrate the recommendations into our work. So we want to just kind of take a moment and go through each of the recommendations and watch our time. But if we do have any clarifying questions or comments, we will take those as we go, because I do take this work very seriously. So the first one is that, you know, there's a point at when you get involved with something called a task force or a working group, you kind of feel like, okay, this does need to reach closure at some point. So we do consider this report and the recommendations as a conclusion of this particular work of this working group that was formulated. There may be a need to reformulate or to do something more in the future, but we just wanted to bring closure to that in terms of this set of recommendations. So that was the first one. I'm just moved to the next one. Data collection and metrics. We do need to get some baseline data, and some of that, you know, I'm up to my ears in metrics and data right now in terms of sort of our own internal responsibilities, as all the agencies are, with trying to identify metrics that are actually trackable over time that we can get baselines on. And I think it is critical for us to understand if we are making progress. And so we take this one also very seriously, but we also have to really understand what we can reasonably collect. But that is another recommendation of the group. To the extent that applicants are willing to self-identify, that will help us in our ability to track our progress as we make a even stronger effort. The third recommendation is more accessible grant applications and agreement processes. I think we've heard this loud and clear. I know in talking to Director Hughes in terms of sort of how can we, you know, really do this across the board with our programs? What can we be doing, I think, in a more concerted way? Make the grant process and agreement more accessible and user-friendly. Some of that is through the electronic application process that we're trying to implement right now internally. And so I think an important recommendation there. Fourth recommendation, statewide preservation plan, commitment to that, include a statement regarding the statewide preservation plan, commits the Heritage Areas Program to evaluating how its documents, structure, and grant making support diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think this is something we all need to learn how to do better, and including action items in the new strategic plan that will speak to that directly. So as we formulate a working group, we will ensure that that these recommendations and this aspect is included in our approach to the strategic plan. Next recommendation, starting with fiscal year 25 grant round, we'll work with local heritage areas to promote grants as tools to enhance support racial equity. So as we do start assembling and putting together that next grant round, this will be part of that as a recommendation in terms of how can we improve this area. Sixth recommendation, number 6, evaluate foundational document structure and representation, include action items in the new Heritage Area Program strategic plan. Once again, as Ariane mentioned earlier, these are things that we all need to be, I think, thoughtful of as we embark on the strategic planning process. This is another one of those ones that really is related to that. So go to the next one, recommendation 7, define diversity, equity, and inclusion in the context of heritage tourism. This is another strategic planning item to determine how we would define that and how it relates to heritage tourism. This is an area where I think we can really look toward the coalition and the heritage areas to work with us in thinking about that in our strategic planning process. Next item, number 8, assess and revise the matching requirements. I've been hearing a lot about this since I started, in terms of how do we really look at this matching requirement, which is statutory, and advocate for appropriate revisions, being that we're already preparing for the next session right now. The strategic plan, if it is completed in time for fiscal year 25, that'll be really critical to our ability to inform and make any revisions that might be necessary for the that following, which would be fiscal year 26 revisions. So we'd be actually needing to get that sequenced with General Assembly, any particular revisions in time for the fiscal year 26 budget. So that's another aspect of that, is to be looking ahead at how we think about matching requirements and how that has created some inequities moving forward. And that will take a lot, I think, in thinking about the process and the timeline of that. Recommendation number 9, diverse mentoring opportunities. How do we help aspects of the heritage areas that maybe need more advice, need more mentoring, to ensure that underrepresented organizations are can be included and not left behind, as the governor has made it a big part of his administration, is, you know, leave no one behind. And how do we help ensure that in this particular aspect of our work? And finally, recommendation number 10, evaluate themes and boundaries. And this is another strategic plan item that we would be basically including in our overall strategic planning process. So there's a lot here to digest. I don't think we can possibly do that in this meeting. As Ariane mentioned, a lot of this would get wrapped into our strategic planning process and how we ensure that these are all thought about and included as we start looking at our programs moving forward. So with that, I will stop. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review these in advance, but let's create an opportunity to take any questions, clarifications, added comments on the work that I also want to thank the working group that was involved in this also. So let me open it up at this point for any comments or questions.
Just get it to boo-boo. Oh, did she go this morning?
None. I do see one about the racial equity group, African American. Yes, that was the priority. We do want to see the recommendations be broad in terms of being inclusive of all underrepresented populations. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, not hearing any, I'm going to move along, but basically the next steps here is concluding the working group and moving forward with the recommendations. It's kind of odd because it's really more of a consensus. Is there anyone that would not agree with these two next steps that are being suggested here? Okay. Anyone, it's not an actual formal vote, but if anyone has any concerns about that, please let us know. But meanwhile, we'll start moving forward on these and integrating them into our work.
Secretary Flora, we did get a question from one of the Heritage Area Directors if we could share these if they could share these recommendations, or we would share them with their boards.
Absolutely. I mean, this should all be transparent. So absolutely, we can make this known, available, yes. And if there's ideas or thoughts from the heritage areas, we would welcome them, or from the coalition. Okay, well, I'm going to move us into the next item, which is just our in-person meeting, which should go fast so that we still have opportunity and time for some of the remainder of the agenda. So, Ariane, you want to cover that?
Yes, for our October, I believe it's 13th meeting coming up, we are proposing doing in person. Sorry, it's the 12th, October 12th. And that would be going back to the pre-COVID format, essentially all-day meeting, 10 to 3, which would include visiting some sites in a designated heritage area that the meeting will be taking place in, having lunch, and also having a business portion of the meeting. We're looking at having that meeting in the Lower Susquehanna Heritage area. We're going to be doing an advanced visit to get our eyes on possible locations and can provide more details. So at this point, if everyone could just reserve that time, we would certainly appreciate it. We know that it's a lot of time, but we think it's really worthwhile to be able to be in person, to see sites and resources in our heritage areas with our own eyes, and to be able to just meet and gather and network more with each other, essentially. And then moving forward, Secretary Flora, did you want to propose a different meeting time for this group?
Yes, I think we could take a poll rather than taking up time today, but I am going to propose that we potentially move these to afternoon meetings, and that's very self-serving. But I am also on the interagency commission that involves school funding, which I believe my vote and voice on that is extremely important, and those are monthly meetings at the same exact time. And so what I'll be proposing is that we move these meetings to afternoon meetings in the future. If there was anyone that would have a standing conflict with that, please let us know. Otherwise, we will probably reset those for the 2024 fiscal year. I'm doing my best for this year to juggle. And in fact, that juggling may include that I may not be able to attend the in-person meeting. But I think it's very important that Bob will stand in. And if that ends up being the case, and it's very important that everyone get together. So I want to see that proceed. My schedule changes every day as secretary, so I don't want to get in the way of this meeting happening. So I don't see anything coming up in the chat or any questions on that. So I'm going to move forward. Closing items, just any member announcements that anyone would like to make before we move into the coalition report. Any announcements? Okay, seeing none. Any new business that didn't come up? I think if there is, we'll probably put it on the next agenda, but anything else anyone wants to weigh in on at this point?
I just wanted to let everyone know that a press release about the grants that you approved earlier will be going out later this afternoon. And we will also be sending notification letters to all of the grantees by end of day tomorrow. So that information will be circulating publicly.
So yes, Ariane, as of the end of this meeting?
Yes, it is public information, yes.
Okay, just so everyone knows. Okay, wonderful. Natalie.
Will that be sent to us as well? I appreciate the information that you send to us in between the meetings so we can stay on top of what's going on and be prepared for the next meetings.
Yes, we will forward a copy of the press release that's going to be going out, I believe, from the governor's office this afternoon. So we'll send that to you as soon as it's issued so you know that it is officially public and out there, and please share in the good news.
Great, yes. Congratulations to all. Thank you. Okay, well, without further ado, we do want to create an opportunity for the Marathon Heritage Areas Coalition report. So we have Bridget and Lucille, co-chairs of that, and I'm going to turn it over to you all to share your report. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you so very much. Bridget, you first. You started off.
Sounds great. We had Shantae and Megan once again do an amazing job representing us as the coalition at the Maryland Municipal League, which is MML, the conference in June. And I wanted to give Shantae or Meg just a minute to just say, what they thought of the conference. Either?
Meg, are you going to do it?
No, Shantae, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The conference is always well attended. This is the one of the largest that I've been to since they opened it up to pre-COVID. So we were able to engage with a number of different towns and legislators from smaller regions across the state. AMACO is more to my liking since I'm a city, which acts as a county, but it's always good to meet all of our constituents that appreciate the work of the heritage area. A lot of them know about us, and some of them, as new legislators, were finding out more information. So we had a really good turnout. We do a map that people put a pin in that says where they are. So the map was completely full by the time we left on the third day. We had an opportunity to see the governor, and also, I don't know whether Meg put it on social media, but we had a great conversation with Lieutenant Governor Miller, and she seemed to be completely aware of everything that we're doing and the great work that we're doing in our prospective heritage areas. And I will say that they seemed very, very happy with our work, and they know that there's more money that needs to be appropriated to the heritage areas because there's so many great projects out there. So she made that very evident in our conversation. And they were, one of the things that she said is that we have to meet Secretary Flora, because she is a true advocate of our program. And so as soon as we can, we need to have a face-to-face with her, which I guess is coming up in October. So thank you very much. And it was a great program. And so look for more information because the next round is MACO. So I believe Bridget and our Western Maryland folks are going to represent there. So thank you so much. And it was a great turnout.
Many thanks to you, Shantae, and to Meg as well, and great lead-in. Yes, MACO Summer Conference, which is Maryland Association of Counties, is coming up next month. We once again have a booth with several directors attending, and each conference allows for the opportunity, like Shantae was saying, to enhance our engagement with our elected officials and our other heritage partners. We're also able to learn how to better improve our engagement material, which Kim and Meg always are a great help with. For example, what happened at MACO previously was the $500,000 supplemental funding that we discussed previously. That came out of a conversation with Governor Hogan. He encouraged us as a coalition to request that supplemental funding. We then sent a memo to Secretary McCord, who instructed his staff to start the request internally. And then now we're here where we're discussing how to disperse that funding. So, and also last year, Lucille of Maryland's state-based heritage program from our partners there. And then my final point will be the Mega Grants Council, which is the Maryland Efficient Grant Council that we've been talking about for many years now. It's an initiative from the Governor's Grant Office and the Mega Council. The purpose is to propose a single grant application portal across state agencies. So most recently, on October 13th, 2022, at the authority meeting, there was a conversation regarding grant application accessibility. And there was authority-wide concern that this would actually make the process more difficult for us as a grant program, and that this one-size-fits-all does not streamline or simplify our grant application process. And at that time, the authority committed to continuing to advocate for MHT and MHA to be exempt from that process. We are still not exempt from that process. Others, however, are. But to better report on the most recent happenings is our Stories of the Chesapeake Executive Director, Gail Owings, who has been present at all the Mega Council meetings, and we're so appreciative of the time she's devoted to this effort.
Great.
Good morning. I have great news. As you know, the Governor's Grants Office had put out an RFP to proceed forward with a unified grants application and a system. That system has not been approved, and it's my understanding that the contract is not going to be fulfilled, and the Governor's Office is no longer interested in moving forward with that unified grants program. The staff to the mega council has left. And while the mega council has not been dissolved because it was created by the Maryland General Assembly, I think we can easily say that it's in a deep sleep, because we have not heard anything as members from the mega council probably since May. And I don't think anything's moving forward. We will be continuing to monitor the Maryland nonprofits call, because that's where this whole idea of the unified council initiated. And so we'll be monitoring that just to make sure that any programs that may have an impact on the MHA grants program is considered.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm now going to turn it over, if you don't mind, Secretary Fleur, to Lucille, who has a couple other points, I think.
Okay, well, before you do that, first of all, Lucille, you really know how to throw a party. So let's roll straight from your comments on the coalition straight into your report for Southern Maryland. And I just have to say, wow.
Thank you, Secretary.
We'll just roll from one into the other if you want.
Thank you. You're very kind, and it was such an honor to have you there, and so many of you there. But this I'll keep to my director's report right now. We wanted to say we met for the first time, coalition, since COVID in person in Annapolis yesterday. We discussed many things. It was an incredible meeting. We're really looking forward to looking at pursuing additional funding, since so many amazing grants and other aspects are left unfunded, as we've just discussed during this this meeting. We are very involved right now in planning our own approach, but we will of course immediately reach out to you, Secretary, and to our administrators to make sure we work together. Many of you all may not know, we are funded through program Open Space. We do not come through the planning budget. It's a separate stream. And the coalition is the ones that are out in front, not only trying to protect that funding, but increase that funding. So we are looking at that very carefully, among many other things, which we will reach out and discuss coming up. We also want to thank the grant panel for all their hard work. And as we noted in the chat, we did have some concerns, but we've been expressing those to the administrators, and we look forward to engaging further in this process. We also have positive ideas, so we really would love to be as involved as is appropriate within that conversation. And we do appreciate the amazing work. That is a lot of work. And of course, we're always advocating for the many grants in our area that aren't yet able to be funded. So that was the main points that we wanted to make, and thank you all. So that's me as director. So then me as the Southern Maryland National Heritage Area. Yes, we were designated National Heritage Area in December, signed into law by President Biden on January 5th, and we launched May 25th. And this is a summary just of our fact sheet. We have a number of pieces of literature to really emphasize not only us, but we're where Maryland began. So to emphasize Maryland and Maryland's uniqueness and power and what it needs to say to the nation. And that's what we were able to do a bit of during our launch and celebration. And it was a party. Woohoo, I have to say. I have a brief 60-second, and I kept it brief, thankfully. This is our new branding. We'll just go to that. We'll start with our new branding. We have a local artist who has been working with us. And so we're doing, it's like that film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That's what we're doing. We're basically launching new branding, moving fast, because the 400th is just 11 years away. And all that we're doing here is also supporting what we'll need to be doing at the state level for that. Just, again, we're where the pebble was thrown initially, so we're trying to just get that started as quickly as possible. Next slide. And these are some of the posters that come from our new branding. They're available. Let me know if you want one. Next slide. We did an ad campaign. Again, we're emphasizing Maryland as well as Southern Maryland. And we're trying to make sure people understand some of the fundamental aspects of this state and how it began and how we really are part of the national dialogue. Next slide. Again, the Piscataway are essential to our heritage area. They're not just at the table, they're in leadership, and that's really important as we go forward. Next slide. I like this one. Seafood and history are a perfect catch. But we're just trying to rebrand, to bring people to our region and help people understand why they should visit and why we're national. And then I think I have a 60-second.
Today we are here collectively to celebrate our new Southern Maryland National Heritage Area, our history.
We acknowledge that there were freedoms gained, freedoms lost, freedoms fought for, and that is a national story.
Because one of the many things that makes this state so special is this place, is this history. It's the Piscataway tribe, it's this people.
The National Park Service looks forward to being your partner and to making the absolute most, to carrying the energy that I feel and that you all feel today, to carrying it forward into a bright future for Southern Maryland.
So thank you all for your attention with that, and also the fact that we were so honored to have the governor and lieutenant governor and the assistant secretary of the DOI, and of course the leadership of the Piscataway Indian Nation and the Piscataway Cooley tribe there. It was a big honor. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lucille. That was really an amazing event, and I've done a lot of events. I was pretty blown away. So thank you. Okay, almost there, everyone. We have Chesapeake Crossroads report. Carol, are you with us?
Yes, thank you very much. You can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all, and good morning. So I'm Executive Director of the Chesapeake Crossroads Heritage Area in Anne Arundel County. Thank you for the opportunity to share the news of a few key projects in the Heritage Area, which all happen to be related to important African American heritage stories in our county that are only now beginning to be told and which are quickly rising to prominence. With today's grant awards, MHAA will support 2 projects that will help make the Elktonia Beach Heritage Park a reality. These are a non-capital grant to Chesapeake Conservancy for elevating Black voices in the new Elktonia Heritage Parks Master Plan, and the capital grant mentioned by Kevin to Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation for Elktonia Heritage Park Phase 2 site acquisition. In the slide, you see the parcel outlined in purple, which are the 5 acres of the historic Elktonia Beach, also known as Cars and Sparrows Beach, which have been preserved to become a new public park. And the long, thin parcel outlined in white, known as the Moore property, which the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation aims to acquire with support of today's capital funding to add additional amenities to the Heritage Park. Elktonia Beach is the last remaining vestige of the original iconic property that will now be preserved as a heritage park. The many partners that are working together will work to ensure its legacy is recognized and the site can continue being a place for all people to visit and enjoy the Chesapeake Bay and share this very national story of a Maryland community's legacy of resilience. The next slide. Here you see the site map for the Crownsville Hospital Memorial Park, which is the very close neighbor of MHT's headquarters at 100 Community Place, which is visible at the top of the slide to the left of the pink rectangle. Commissioned in 1910 as the Maryland Hospital for the Negro Insane, this facility was planned to be a model of good management and sustainability. As I understand it, it was one of only 3 institutions nationwide that opened specifically for African Americans. Patients were brought from all over and not just Maryland, and the hospital became overcrowded and the conditions and treatment of patients deteriorated so markedly that it became a place of shocking experimentation, and the death rate among patients surpassed 30%. The stories are recent enough that many oral histories of former patients, employees, neighbors, and more are currently being collected vigorously. I am a strong believer that communities should tell their own stories. So I urge the authority to arrange a tour of the complex to hear this important history from those who lived it. Anne Arundel County recently acquired this property from the state, and a variety of exciting new plans are being proposed for this very large complex. You'll note the brick-colored hatched area in the upper center that is identified as under MHT easement, as well as the green hatched areas that are under Maryland Environmental Trust easement. County planners and many other partners hope to make this into a place of healing and commemoration, as well as home to many nonprofits and community initiatives, including a museum and a memorial wall at the cemetery. I look forward to bringing more concrete plans to your attention at future meetings. And the next slide. On July 1st, the town of Columbia Beach in Shadyside celebrated its annual Columbia Beach Day with special dedication of new signage. With a proud history that dates back to the 1940s, this historically African American community was established as a summer retreat for African Americans during the segregation era, when racist policies barred the Black community from other resort towns along the Chesapeake Bay. Columbia Beach is now a diverse community with a mix of year-round and weekend and vacation homes. It is a private gated community managed by the Columbia Beach Citizens Improvement Association. In the slide, you see a photograph of many of the town residents who proudly unveiled 2 brown roadside markers and an interpretive panel about the history of the community, which will be mounted outside of the gates for all to view, and noted that in fiscal 22, the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation received an MHT non-capital grant to support the preparation of a National Register of Historic Places nomination for the community of Columbia Beach, which is now well underway. I understand that when approved, this will be the first historic African American community approved for the register in the state of Maryland. And finally, we're delighted that our DMO's non-capital grant application for sharing civil rights stories with visitors was also funded in time for the state's much anticipated Year of Civil Rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Great work. Really love hearing all these stories. So next we have Beach to Bay up with Lisa, and I know we're almost at time, so I'm hoping everyone can hold on and hear about the exciting work going on in Beach to Bay, and then that'll be the last item we have for today. But Lisa, please, the floor is yours.
I'm going to be quick as the last person of the last item. So I just wanted to let everyone know we've sort of finished up one phase of our African American Heritage product development, and we got several grants to help us see this through. So next slide shows the cover of a new brochure we have in line with all of our ways, our beaches, byways, waterways, storyways, folkways. This is a self-guided driving tour of approximately 30 sites on the lower shore of people or places of historic significance. And we did some marketing of this in the Washington Post and Hearst publications, and got a huge response, almost to the point that we cannot fulfill because of the number of requests. So we're very excited to be able to share this. Next slide. The next couple of slides show some of the interpretive markers that we were able to fund. We selected 5 locations. This is just one that we installed in Crisfield, and this is another that is in Pocomoke. They range in size from 2 by 3 feet to 3 by 4 feet. And this project, oops, that's okay. We are excited to be able to do more with some additional funding that we've received. This project we did in partnership with Delmarva Public Media, and they are the NPR station here on the shore. We partnered with them to do a heritage series throughout the month of May, and it was entitled Rarely Told Stories of the Eastern Shore. And we hope to be able to do more of those. What was my next slide? I like I said, this is going to be brief. I'm blazing right through it. And this, you probably can't capture that QR code, but this is such a cool project. This is augmented reality, and someone can put their camera on the QR code. And we did 3 of these in a studio in a green room. So when people stand before the Charles Tinley mural in Berlin and they want to learn about Charles Tinley, they can click on this QR code, and it's actually the Tinley Choir singing one of his famous hymns. And we did this for different locations throughout the 3 counties. But yay! So we are excited to offer this, and we may do a little bit more of that. And I don't think that's me. That's okay. So that is what we have been working on. We did do some advertising, and we got a free editorial in the Ocean City Visitors Guide put out by Vista Graphics for Black heritage sites on the shore. And we are promoting all of the museums in a hotel key card that goes to all the folks who stay at the hotels in Ocean City. And it's a ad for our museums with a QR code that takes folks directly to our page of a listing of all, discover heritage close by and that kind of thing. Just trying to capitalize on all the hundreds of thousands of people here at the beach in the summer. That's all I have. But again, I did want to reiterate that I thought the grants review panel did a fabulous job, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the attempt at being as equitable as possible. And it gave me goosebumps when he called out the very #1 ranked grant, which was the Pocomoke Indian Nation. And we just told them over and over that, why can't you ask for more money? But they just have a real hard time with match. So next time.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to get out there and spend time with you all because I just love the work you all are doing. It's just so wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, we were almost at adjournment here. Did I see another slide of upcoming Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area upcoming events? Everyone can sort of just check these out. Before we close and ask for adjournment, I just want to also note that I will be at Mako. We will have a booth, MDP booth there. We're also going to have a Maryland 250, a booth that we'll be doubling with. So there was, in case you missed it, a new executive order for Maryland 250 that was issued. We've updated that executive order from the one that had been issued by Governor Hogan to be more inclusive, to include other aspects that we thought were really critical around service and a variety of other issues. So that was reissued by the governor, 4th of July week. Michelle Johnson is the director of that, and she works out of MDP. So please stop by and see her, stop by and see the MDP booth also at Mako, stop by and see me. I'm looking forward to that event. This is new for me, so it'll be a new experience. So help me out, guide me if you see me along looking lost. And I think with that, we're ready to adjourn. So motion to adjourn. Anyone out there?
So moved. It's Marty.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Natalie. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Look forward to
Secretary Flora. Before we end, if we could just, I wanted to let you know, while we were talking, I got an email. The press release from the governor's office is going to go out at 2:30 today.
Right.
So Heritage Areas, please hold off on sending your own press releases until after the governor has issued his. We appreciate that, and congratulations to all the grant recipients, and thank you to everyone for all of your support of MHAA.
Great. Thank you all.